So, while we do still have a podcast, the theme of this podcast, like we're talking in the middle of the night.
Yep.
And we said, you know what? Let's come up with a list of our top 5 night levels in games.
Ooh, ooh.
Yep, like it just works.
It does.
If we're going to talk in the middle of the night, let's talk about these levels. So, um
What are your top five? What's your top five first? I want to know if we.
um
You know what? Let's
so
do it like this. I have a better idea. Let's
okay.
start from five, going up to one, right? But
Okay.
you say one, and then I'll say one, and
Perfect. So
then we can
I'm
kind of bounce it back and forth.
so I am going to start. My number 5 was,
Hmm.
and again, I sound like a broken record. Yakuza, the Yakuza 4 opening sequence where you're playing as the loan shark Akiyama, and
Hmm.
you're in Kamurocho, Tokyo, and it's raining. And back then they really captured like the reflection of the neon lights at night, reflecting off of the puddles and things like that. It was, I want to say, my first ever introduction to that series because figured out how to sign up for a Japanese PSN account in 2007. Like, and there took some doing back then, like to get that going. And this was the first one of the first things I downloaded. And maybe that timeline is a little off because I don't think this came out in 2007, but it might have been 2008, 2009 and when I downloaded this. But I thought it was cool. Like we weren't getting, like no one thought we were going to get the latest Yakuza, and just walking through Kamurocho at night in the rain, I thought was the coolest thing.
What console? What console was this?
PS3,
Oh, okay, yeah, that would look pretty good.
yeah,
The rain effects on PlayStation 3 were really good. That was like around the time they did what was it? Heavy Rain was like
yes,
the rainiest game in that console generation.
yeah. I mean, think about like if you actually played the first 2 Yakuza games on the PS2.
Hmm.
Um, they didn't hold a candle to the type of visual fidelity that you were getting here. So
Nice.
I love that. What about you? What's your number 5?
My number five is Jet Grind Radio. It's Benton Cho. Benton Cho is kind of like this city filled in night, but all of it reminds me. It reminds me of. As a matter of fact, in one of our thumbnails for one of our short videos, it reminds me of that kind of electric city at night, and it has this nice funky tune to it that I would never forget. That even to this day I play it in my car every now and then, and I just remember always playing this game on the Dreamcast and going to Benton Show, and the town has like this subsection of different subways that lead to other parts of the city that have like kind of like a giant epicenter with all these television screens mounted on the walls around it that kind of like illuminated that part of the epicenter. Then you had another section of the city that had it looks like a kind of like a restaurant slum area. It was such a good looking, cell shaded look for that time, which was what, 1999 was that?
Yeah.
Sega Dreamcast?
Yep.
Man, it just sticks in my head. It's like top five. That's number five of my favorite. What's
I
your number
didn't.
four?
Well, I was just gonna say I didn't have
Oh,
a
okay.
Dreamcast, but a friend
Oh,
had
okay.
that game, and it was visually stunning.
Yeah.
But my number 4, and I hate to mention like modern AAA games, but I'm going to mention this one, Ratchet
It's
and
fun.
Clank: A Rift Apart. Early in the game, you're in this place
Mm.
called Nefarious City, and it's just this. I'm going to just call it like a tech demo for HDR, and I don't know if it does ray tracing, but this is what the PlayStation 5 can do. It has kind of like a Blade Runner, that
Oh
sort of
man.
effect, and yeah, it's cartoony, it's goofy, but I was just playing through this part of the game, and it's a very good game. The whole game is great. It was really one of the few games on the PlayStation 5 that I really played to completion and felt like I had something new and different. Um, but this city stage was just beautiful, and I was like, it's basically a hub, and you do some fighting, and you don't stay there long in the whole grand scheme of the game. But I just loved looking at it, and it made me want to see what these core technologies built into the PlayStation 5 could do moving forward.
It seemed I think I did get a look at that at some point. I was watching someone's commentary video, and I think I know exactly what you're talking about. I have seen it. I've never played the game, but um, yeah, those I remember those graphics that I saw for that game, that Ratchet and Clank game on the PS5, actually almost got me to purchase a PlayStation 5. Almost.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, I had the OLED with the HDR, and that was the first game that I played on the PlayStation 5. And it was one of those experiences like, okay, I see what the quote unquote next generation is going to be like. Now, granted, it didn't really pan out that way. There's, PlayStation 5, has some good games, but it's just, it's a commodity product at this point. And I don't think
Mm,
a lot of games matched up to that. Maybe the Spider-Man games, which are pretty good, but
mhm.
yeah, Ratchet and Clank I think is still the most special game on the console.
Oh, okay. Well,
So, what about you?
for my number four, it's going to be. I felt like if I didn't say this one game, people would probably hate me. So I put this on here because I do actually love this night area, and it is Shin Megami Tensei 4, Ueno in Tokyo. The Ueno part sticks in my brain rent free, and it never leaves. Have you ever played Shin Megami Tensei 4 on the 3DS?
You know what? I have it. I have never played it.
Okay, well, it has Ueno has this nice, weird, drab kind of tone. I'm always gonna bring up music because music sticks in my head and it makes me feel the experience that I'm playing. I always remember that weird sound, that song that it plays, that really brought this night kind of almost deadish looking city. But for some reason, even on the 3DS, it was so atmospheric. It just never leaves my brain. It just sticks there, and it's wet, it's bloody, it's gritty, it's just great, and I love it.
Huh.
Yeah, one day if you ever happen to find a copy, play that game or emulate it,
Oh, I've
because
got
that's
I've
what.
got it. I've got it in the
Please don't say
collection.
you have it sealed, don't you?
Yes.
That's why you've never played it. You have it sealed. All right. I won't fault you on that. It's
I bought
fine.
it to play. I swear I bought it to play, and then life happened, and I never got around to it.
Well, I don't fault you too much because I remember when Shin Megami Tensei 4 launched, a lot of people were buying it as speculating because a lot of SMT stuff were really hard to find before then.
Hmm. Well,
So
I haven't checked the price. I mean, did it become expensive?
no,
Is it okay?
no, it's not expensive because too many people speculated on it and too many people have it. So it's not pricey.
All right.
But what's your number four? Wait, no, what's your number three?
I think we're at three. Yeah, three. So my number three. Now this is maybe cheating a little bit, but it's Super Mario Land 2 on the Game Boy, which is the space
Whoa.
zone, which is not admittedly night, but it's space, it's stars, it's moons.
Yeah, close
I,
enough.
I
Yeah.
and I played it a lot at night. That was one of my favorite games growing up, and I just like Mario in the space suit. You had like the angry stars, like in most Mario games, stars would they were your friends, but in this one you had to avoid them, and the smiling half moons, and it just I don't know. There's something about it that because I always played it at night and that was my favorite zone in the game, I had to include it. Um, I still say it's one of the better Mario games, and I think it's underappreciated these
It
days.
is. It
Uh,
is. It really is.
so that's my number three. What's your number three?
Um, my number three. This one's a bit tricky because I thought about switching, but I'm gonna keep it the way it is. My number three is gonna be Streets of Rage 2, the bridge level. That would be level
Okay,
2. Have you ever played Streets of Rage 2?
loved it. One of my favorite
All right.
games.
So you know the bridge level.
I
That
know it
that
well.
that music and that background of the city inspired by New York, I absolutely love everything about that level. The it's just like no one. I don't think there is no one that has done a beat 'em up level that good like level 2 in Streets of Rage 2. It's just so good.
If I am I wrong to think this? I've played Streets of Rage many times, but doesn't the whole
Mhm.
game happen at night?
No. When you get to level 6, after level yeah, when you get to level 6, you're on the boat, and then you end up on the beach, and then it's sunrise.
Okay. Because I
Yeah,
feel like a lot of it
only
is at night. The
only Streets of Rage 1, the whole game takes place at night.
Okay.
Yeah, only Streets of Rage 1. You always
Well,
tried to get me there.
I don't know. Because whenever I think of Streets of Rage, I mean, I think of nighttime. I think of obviously the first level,
Yeah,
the amusement park. I think level is
yeah,
I think at night, but no, that second one, the bridge. You
yeah,
are 100% right about that one.
yeah. What about you? What's your two?
So I was kind of going back and forth, and I have to give a honorable mention to the original Soul Hackers game on the Saturn.
Oh,
The it has that atmospheric music. it
yeah.
it it has, it starts out that opening part is at night, but it had such a language barrier that I never really got into that game until they re-released it on the 3DS.
Yep.
So that'll be my honorable mention. But I went with Earthbound, the opening of Earthbound in On It when the meteor lands. And
Mm-hmm.
I played Earthbound like back in the day, rented it, shortly after release. And it's just one of those special experiences. It, most of the game is not at night, but that opening sequence, just the little kids wondering what happened and going out in their pajamas, and the police officers have cordoned off the area, and you get that first little taste of that art style and what is a truly unique game. And I just thought it was the perfect opening to an awesome game.
Okay. Since you gave an honorable mention, I'm gonna give one. And
Okay.
this was one that was originally going to be on my list, but I took it off because I felt like it's actually not a level. It's actually just a city. And I was gonna say Midgar from Final Fantasy VII,
Yes. Oh my God.
which
Yes.
that place is just drowned in forever night for some reason. Like, yeah, unless you're watching a movie, then the sun comes up. But I always thought that Midgar was a really cool looking city at night. Um, even when you see, I don't, I, I remember when I would play the game, on in 19, what was it, 97, 98.
97, I
Um,
think. Yeah.
I remember when you make it to the, what do you call it, the world map, and if you the closer you ran to Midgar, it would get darker and darker and darker. And I always liked that little touch, that design touch. I thought that was really really cool.
Yeah. I mean, I
But
remember one of my great memories of video games was leaving Midgar because I
yeah,
couldn't fathom that the game could be bigger than that.
yes, yes, 1,000%. I remember when you fight that boss on the bridge and then you end up leaving, and I was like, what do you mean I'm leaving? Is this the end of the game? Like, it can't be the end. It's like, no, there's a whole world out there for you to explore now. Yeah, that's, oh man, that's great stuff. But my number two is going to be, and we spoke about this, it's going to be Turtles in Time, Neon Knight Riders. Um,
Awesome.
this is the level where you're on the hoverboard and you have to fight the foot soldiers, but there's this, the music's great. I'm always going to bring up music. The music is fantastic. It has this nice electronica music, and the background has like this splash of greens and blues and purples, and you see spotlights in the city just waving back and forth. It's really cool. It has like this nice neo Kobe city kind of look from Snatcher, and I loved it. It's so good, so good.
Yeah, no, that was a good one. When you mentioned that, I was like, oh yeah, I that could easily have been on my list.
Yeah, Neon Knight Riders is a good one.
Yeah.
All right, I think we made it to number one.
Number
What's your
one.
number one?
When we talked about doing this, the first, just as it was the first thing that popped into mind, was the
Mm.
first level of Strider.
Oh,
And
I love that level.
yeah, and I've finished Strider, but for whatever reason, that level is Strider in my mind. You
Yeah.
know, on the, what are the Russian, like onion dome
Yep.
things, and you're just learning the move set. And back in the arcade, I mean, to have that kind of sprite work, that kind of art style, and just a cool character, and the kind of like the way he traversed the screen
Yeah.
was so impressive. And it's when you say video games at night, that just pops into my mind. And it's a great game overall. It's one of the gems of late 80s, early 90s arcades. But it was just that thing that was seared into my mind when I thought of night levels.
Yeah. Strider is a very good choice. Even the way the intro of the level comes up as the screen is scrolling through the city and then Strider comes hand gliding into the level and then it just starts. That is nostalgia right there. That is a good level. That's a good one. Um, my number one is a game. I don't know if a lot of people know this game on the PlayStation 1. It was called Einhander. It was made by Squaresoft right during the time when they were doing Final Fantasy VII. They just released Brave Fencer Musashi and all those games. Einhander was this shmup that they made where uh you can shoot regular weapons, but when you killed an enemy, they would drop their guns in it, and you had time to pick it up and hold it in your ship's arm and use it as a sub weapon. But the first level is very inspired by Blade Runner. If you ever watch clips of that game, there's a scene where you're flying the ship and you're shooting enemies, and there's a giant screen with a woman's face on it. And it has like this they live kind of moment where her face kind of peels away and there's a skeleton underneath, and it's so cool. You're flying your ship through all these Japanese neon signs, and it's so cool, and it has a nice like techno track to it. It's so good.
Yeah, I have never played Einhander, and I wanted, to buy it back in the day, and
Mm.
instead I went with that game, which I think has almost like a similar title. It was like a fighting game that had Cloud in it.
Oh,
Um,
or guys.
Air Guides, yeah, yeah, yeah. And because
Yep.
for whatever reason, it was like PlayStation One had a lot of games with German titles,
Yeah.
like.
Yeah, that's weird. Yeah.
So I went with Airgites and
Mhm.
didn't get Einhander. So, but yeah,
Oh
I'm
man.
looking at it now, and yes, you are absolutely right.
It has a
It
Blade Runner look to it, right?
Yes, 100%.
Yeah. It's so good. It's such a great game. Still haven't beaten that game too. I gotta beat that game.